Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news this Thursday night as Fabrizio Romano reveals Amorim's dream transfer this summer transfer window. But does that mean that we'll have to sell Mainu or maybe even Garnacho? We'll talk about that as well. Ben Jacobs has also been speaking about Angel Gomez and the potential of him coming to Manchester United. I really want to get into the whole Ugarte thing. I think there's a wider picture here that is almost a bit sensationalist. You can criticise players. I don't know where all these smug prats come from that you can't criticise players. You can. It's the way that you do it though. And I think that's the problem with the Ugarte thing. It's the immaturity and pile-on that just started way too soon with very little evidence, which I think is appalling. We'll talk about that as well. Also, I really do want to touch on this change in the transfer window that the Premier League have spoken about as well, if we've got time. So the transfer window is basically opening up on June the 1st, which is about a week and a half earlier than normal. I don't see how we do any deals anyway until July, because basically June is like January. It's part of the financial year that doesn't end till June the 30th. So the window being open for us, I don't think it helps us. I think it might hinder us because other clubs can do business when we can't. So I think that might be a bit of a problem for us unless we can shift some players. Sion says, why would you sell Mainu? Well, let's start off with the latest news then. So coming in from Fabrizio Romano this afternoon, Tyler Dibbling is the dream target for Manchester United this summer. Southampton do want £100 million. They believe he is one of the best players in the world in terms of potential in his position. Do you think that Tyler Dibbling is one of the best players in the world in his position based on potential? I think it's interesting. Top Players is making T-Bridge. Hey, if you want to check that video out, I'll drop it in the video description and I'll pin it in the chat. Really enjoyed doing that. I just basically went live in my kitchen, testing out a new camera, making tea and talking about my new radio show. So you can check that out. But I mean, look, Tyler Dibbling, I have to be very careful here because it is the same as Ugarte. It is the same as Memphis Depay. It's the same as any signing. If Man United buy this player, he will have my backing and support. And he's a young player, so he certainly will do anyway. But I do have reservations about... I think he's even been somebody said to me he's been liking the posts about him being worth £100 million on social media. I mean, I'd like it. You know, Goldbridge is worth £100 million at 19. I'd like that as well. I mean, imagine me on Instagram as a 19-year-old footballer. Bloody hell. I wouldn't be able to get in the door. I'd have a head so big. You know, I'd mess it up. Women, drink. Yeah, I'd mess it up within 5 minutes. But respect. I quite like the fact that he's liking posts that he's worth £100 million. I mean, why not? You know, why not? The reality is he's not worth £100 million. And I think he's a decent player. And if he comes to Man United, I'll support him. And I'll be excited. But he's not £100 million. And I don't really know why he's the dream signing for Manchester United either. I doubt Ruben Amorim was in Portugal last October. And you know, the wife says, you're coming out trick-or-treating. He's like, no, I'm too obsessed with this Southampton player that I'd love to sign at some point in next summer, whether I'm at Sporting or Man City or Man United. So I think it's coming from Jason Wilcox, who was at Southampton before. And I think this sort of is where I'd say the Dibbling thing before we talk about Mainu is that, remember that the transfer strategic team isn't just the manager, Ruben Amorim, and wasn't just the manager, Eric Ten Hag. Sir Jim Radcliffe is very big on having a team of experts that make the final decision. And I don't mind that. If we'd have had this team of experts, we never would have bought Onana and sold De Gea. So I don't mind that. But I do think that when it says Amorim's dream transfer deal, is it really Amorim's transfer deal? Or is it Amorim would take him, but Jason Wilcox is sat there going, I've played the game. He has. He won a Premier League title at Blackburn Rovers. But I don't mean that. I've played the game. I've coached this lad. I've been at Southampton and he's an amazing talent. And I think it probably is coming from Jason Wilcox. And the interesting thing is, I'm sure some of you have heard it as well, I certainly have, is that they hold Jason Wilcox in very high esteem at Manchester United, rightly or wrongly. So this would be his... this would be on him. Sebastian says, Dibbling deal, walk away. I mean, we literally cannot sign this player. Like, we cannot sign this player. Like, I know that sounds really harsh, but we can't sign this player for £100 million. We just can't. He's only just 19. He won't be 20 until February next year. We can't spend £100 million on a player that's getting relegated from Southampton that, if we're being honest, most of us can barely remember watching this season. I honestly have only watched him probably play 2 or 3 times. And whilst he's looked okay, he's not £100 million. He's not even £60 million. I mean, my theory is this £100 million story a bit of spin? Is it a bit of smoke and mirrors that United are thinking of doing a deal for 60, and to justify spending 60, they need a story that he's worth 100, so that when we get him for 60, we go, wow, what a bargain. He ain't worth 60. You know what? Opinions are opinions. We've all got them. He ain't worth 60, is he? He's worth 45. Top. That's it. Danny says maybe he's not even worth 40. He's worth 45 tops. He ain't worth 60. 60 would be laughable. Look, Lenny Yoro went for 53 over a 5-year deal, and Real Madrid wanted him. We're going to spend £100 million on a player that Spurs want. He ain't worth it. He ain't worth it. And I really do want him at Man United. If this is the player that Wilcox wants and Amorim wants, I really do want him at Man United. But riddle me this. Would you want to buy somebody like, I don't know, would you have wanted Dorgu for 60 million? Would you have wanted Agate for 80 million? Would you have wanted De Ligt for 80 million? Would you have wanted Mazraoui for 50 million? Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying the price is stupid and we can't do that. The interesting thing is, to do a deal like that, would you need to sell a Mainu? Would you need to sell a Garnacho? Because suddenly, spending big on Dibbling is more possible if you've sold a Mainu. And obviously this morning and for the day, and I know Beth spoke about it on the 2 o'clock, a lot of talk around Mainu. I think that the only thing I could offer up about this is that if United want Dibbling because he fits the system and Mainu doesn't, then ruthlessly disagree with this. But no, it would be ruthless, but I disagree with it. I'm not ruthlessly disagreeing. How do you ruthlessly disagree? Punch someone in the face and say, no, don't do that. We don't do violence. To ruthlessly disagree, I've shoved you in a pond and we're not happy. Can we have a Chinese takeaway tonight? No. And shove them in a pond. That would be to ruthlessly disagree, I suppose, wouldn't it? Can I have a pay rise? No, and I've burned your car. Can we go and see my mother at the weekend? No, and I've shit on your side of the bed. That would be to ruthlessly disagree, wouldn't it? I don't know what I'm doing there. I haven't even had a drink yet. No, it would be ruthless to get rid of Mainu. If you've got any ruthlessly disagree examples, get in the chat. We'll read some of those out. I'm fresh from my video on my channel, so if you know, you know. But yeah, it would be ruthless to get rid of Mainu, and I would disagree with it. But I've got to be honest, sometimes in life you can disagree with something, but you can put yourself into somebody's shoes and say, I can see why they did it. I remember a mate of mine once, we were down a pub, he was happily married, and basically he came into the pub and he said, I'm getting a divorce. And everyone said, why? You've got a great wife, you've got a great life, why? And he said, in a moment of weakness, at a works party, I'd had a lot to drink and I did this. And then he showed us a picture and everybody was like, you're an absolute idiot. You're an idiot. And none of us would have done it. But knowing what you're like and knowing what that picture looks like, we're not surprised and we can see why you did it. And I think that I completely disagree with infidelity. And I also completely disagree with selling a Mainu or a Garnacho. But I can see a scenario where, and I bet you lot are thinking, what am I watching? I can see a scenario where somebody more ruthless than me, with less attachment to Man United than me, could look at it and go, Mainu is pure profit, and it allows us to bring Dibbling in, and Dibbling fits the system better than Mainu, so let's do that deal. It's not really the United way, but you could see how they might do it. So could Dibbling lead to a Mainu sale? It could. It could. Could Yildiz lead to a Garnacho sale? It could, because they might be players that Amorim prefers in his system. But does it tear up what we're all about to do it? I don't think Sir Jim's bothered about that. Just on Mainu, by the way, I mean, look, you've got to get the money from somewhere. If we are legitimately in for Tyler Dibbling, and let's not forget, it's Fabrizio Romano saying that Manchester United's dream signing is Tyler Dibbling, and that's like Ornstein saying it. I know Romano, for some reason, doesn't get the authority of Ornstein. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Why doesn't Fabrizio get the authority of David Ornstein? Is it because David Ornstein's a little bit more... I suppose Fabrizio's a little bit more commercial, isn't he? You know, whereas David Ornstein's a little bit more reserved. But I think that Rob Taft makes a good point. We're getting Dorgeles. He's at Salzburg, isn't he? I would not be surprised if we go back and get him, actually. I would not be surprised. But you know what? I don't think there's much difference in relation to Manchester United transfer news when it comes to Fabrizio or it comes to David Ornstein. In fact, what was that story recently that Fabrizio broke overnight? Oh, of course. Kenda. So Fabrizio is very credible. And all I would say is, imagine if it was David Ornstein tonight saying that Manchester United's dream target is Tyler Dibbling. We'd all be going, well, that's the player we're going for, aren't we? So when I saw that was coming in from Fabrizio Romano, I was like, well, this is obviously very, very legit. Very, very legit. So remember that one. Like him or loathe him, think he's credible or not. For me, he is one of the two most credible journalists in relation to Manchester United transfer news, and I know for a fact that those two, Ornstein and Romano, are way, way, way ahead of anybody else, and they are sourced and briefed way more than anybody else, and Man United like to give them the stuff because it works. So, you know, Dibbling is obviously a player that United wants, which is interesting because where's this money coming from? You know, there's no magic tree, and we're not definitely going to qualify for the Champions League. So where is this money coming from? And that could lead to, are we going to sell Kobbie Mainoo? I don't know. On that, by the way, a lot of people have been messaging me today. Some good, some bad. But I'm not even going to put other people's news out there or the stuff I've been told. I've been told so much stuff today from people who are in Mainoo's inner circle or on the training ground at Man United, and respect to all of those people. All I'm going to say is, based on what I've been told today, I still stick by my theory. And that might give you a hint of some of the stuff I've been told today. I don't think Mainoo's going anywhere. I think this is Manchester United making a story out of nothing to try and make themselves look good. I don't think we're selling Mainoo. I think the new contract gets handed out and then it's like, oh, it's like a new signing, everybody. Which was always going to happen anyway. I think Mainoo 100% is signing a new contract. And I think this is all about making a very challenging summer transfer window. We did it with Anthony Martial a few years ago. It was a January transfer window. We needed to buy players. And right smack in the middle of the January transfer window, we announced a new contract for Anthony Martial. We could have announced that in December. We could have announced it in February. We announced it in the middle of a transfer window where we needed to buy other players. And it was like, oh, it's like a new signing. And I think this will happen with Mainoo. Oh, the jeopardy that we might sell Mainoo. Oh my God, I can't believe they're thinking about doing it. Oh my God, they might sell Mainoo. Oh my God, they might do it. It's they're the worst owners we've ever had. They're horrible, horrible people. Oh, I wouldn't give them an umbrella in a port if it was raining. They're horrible. Oh, they buy him an ice cream. They've just given him a new contract. And that's where I think we're heading with this. Self-generated spin story to make yourselves maybe look bad and then come out of it looking good. I don't think Mainoo's going anywhere. And also, just before we move on from that, do you agree with me on this, or do you have any comeback on this? Apparently, Mainoo is on 20 grand a week. 20 grand a week. I don't know how the guy gets up in the morning. Now, I'm sure I mean, I'd like to earn 20 grand a week. I'm just trying to figure out if I do earn 20 grand a week. But 20 grand a week's a lot of money, isn't it? But in a footballing sense, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And considering he is, and you know, he was a starting player for England, his wage is a joke. It is a joke. You can say 20 grand is in, you know, I would like 20 grand, but it is very disrespectful for a player of his career so far to be earning 20 grand when you think that Victor Lindelof earns 120 grand a week. Christian Eriksen's earning 150 grand a week. He does deserve more money. Now, I don't know what Man United are offering him, but you know, at least 80 grand a week. At least. I'd want what Yoro's on, to be honest. I'd say, what's Yoro on? I want the same contract as him. But there you go. Let's file the Mainu talk in with the Longstaff talk. The main Longstaff, not the ginger one, says Nick P. And thank you very much for your super chat, Nick P. Hope you're doing well. Captain T1 says, I don't even think Amorim wants Dibbling. I think it's an Ineos signing for the new poster boy of United, not discrediting his talent, though. I certainly think it's coming more from Wilcox, yeah. But look, if I'm the manager of Man United and I'm Ruben Amorim and Jason Wilcox says to me, I really like Dibbling. I think he's brilliant. I think he's superb. And I look at it and I go, he does fit my system and he is very talented. You sort of like go, yeah, okay, let's do it. And I think that may be what's happening. Mark, you're the GOAT, says Mike. I think my real name got blocked because of my name. Can we fix that? I don't know how else to reach you. I'm a member too. Cheers, says Mike K. I don't know, mate. I don't know what your real name would be, but can't you just do it under Mike K? We know who you are. Is there any more rumours about Delot leaving in the summer, says Anders. I think he has been horrible this season compared to last season. There's a couple of other stories I want to talk about, just some evening news as well, but nothing about Delot. I've not heard anything about Delot. I don't think Delot's not... Look, Delot's not going anywhere. Let's be clear. Delot's not going anywhere. Like, we can easily, discuss that, but he's not going anywhere, is he? You know, Amorim loves him. Nick P says, we have to sell Mainu to get Dibbling. Might be something we look back at in a few years and think, what on earth? Yeah. Smoggy, hope you're doing well, pal, says he's got to be 25 million max in my mind, but what's the point when we already have Shea Lacey? Similar age, stature, and probably talent. I like Lacey. I do like Lacey, and I'm glad that you mentioned him, and there are others coming through. The thing about Lacey is we've really got to look after him. He's had a few injuries recently, and we really need to look after him. I think it's a name that everybody knows, and there are others, but yeah, we need to try and get him fit and staying fit. That's the key thing with Lacey. Will Anana go? Because I'm praying for this to happen. Can't stand him as a keeper. Hope United buy Kudus and use Ahmad as right wing back and Mazraoui as right centre back, says Desiree. I think Kudus is an interesting player. I don't think we'll be getting him out of West Ham though, will we? Will we get four players than we will get four better players than Dibbling for 100 million if we scout other markets, says Kizile. Are we able to do those 10-year, 10 million a year deals like Chelsea were doing? I'm not saying to do it, but is this something we can do in our position, says Chris. Keel says that Dibbling's worth 12 million. Just going back to what Chris says, basically what you're talking about is what we've done with Yoro. We've put Yoro on a 5-year deal and we've given Lille 50 million pounds, but we'll pay them 10 million pounds over the next 5 years. We did it with Xerxes. So we will still do those things, but remember, we owe 90 million pounds because we've been doing that. We've got 90 million pounds to pay this summer because we've been doing that for a few years now. And that's what I mean. It sort of cancels itself out the more you do it, because every year you're paying for last year and the year before and the year before. David Benson says, a bit off topic, Kenda wanted to come here, Chelsea outbid us, but does a player have no say at all? Do they just do what they're told? I think in the case of Kenda and every other football that's done this, ideally maybe you want to go to Man United and then another club like Chelsea comes in and goes, here's this money, and player goes, ooh, I quite like that, and then Man United go, we're not offering you that, and then you go, well, I'll go there then. That always happens. Patrick Lynch, thank you very much for your super chat tonight. Says, we've seen in the past that price tags affect players. That's magnified even more at United. New signings have pressure enough for us without adding unjustified transfer for me. It's a no in relation to Dibbling. Well, look, you know what? I mean, I do want to talk about Angel Gomez and a couple of other bits as well, but it's not a bad time to to discuss the Agate stuff. I mean, I think the Agate stuff baffles me. It's strange, but I'm also mature and experienced and living the reality enough to know that the world isn't and never will be the world that some people want it to be. I mean, we're talking football here, and we're talking about the incomprehensible and confusing abuse that Agate gets from a minority in our fan base. But let's not pretend that there are people right here, right now in the world facing pain and misery on a completely different level because there are weird and horrible people out there. So, you know, sometimes I find the self-righteous pontificating just a bit nauseating. Like, we're not going to stop this. Some people want to see the world burn. In politics, you know, some people shouldn't be allowed near other people, you know, knife crime, all these things, right? There are horrible people out there. We're never going to change that. So I'm not sat here going, the people who are abusing Agate need rounding up and, you know, sending off to an island where they can contemplate their abuse of Agate, because that's not going to happen. There are people like that out there. You know, Sancho, Rashford, Saka missed penalties in a final. There was no post-mortem on Southgate's tactics because it was all about the racism that those three players faced afterwards. So there are horrible people out there. But with the Agate thing, it's not really about the abuse. It's about the why. You know, players get abused. You get abused. I get abused to ways that we don't deserve, in ways that are abhorrent and vile. We know that's out there. It pisses me off when people start saying it shouldn't happen, because it will happen. It will happen. The question is, why Agate? That's the thing for me. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why a player that has barely been here, if we're being completely honest, and he got it from a very early stage as well. Like, I remember the nickname that Agate had in September. He's had it for just so long, and I just don't get it. And it's great to see the response from the majority, but it's the why I don't understand. I understand that some people will take a dislike or some people, I can look at a player and go, they'll never be a Man United player. They'll never be a Man United player. You know, I mean, yeah, there's loads of examples of that. But to take it to a really personal level, consistently, abusively, is strange. But if a player's been here for 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, it's not acceptable, but it's based on a bit of a CV, isn't it? The thing about the Agate thing, and it happened with Xerxes, and it's happened with De Ligt, is it's almost an instant dislike. And it reminds me a little bit of the managerial cycle at Manchester United. When you look at Jose, it was 2.5 years. When you look at Solskjaer, it was 2.5 years. When you look at Van Gaal, I think it was 2 years. But Mourinho, like Ten Hag, it started after 12 months. And with Amorim, there are people who've been trying to start it after 3 months. It just gets less and less and less and less. And, you know, that's incredible. But with players who've never played in the Premier League, I just find it, I find it really, really strange. But just actually, you know what? To flip it a little bit is there was a couple of prats today. I got sent a couple of tweets today. A couple of prats out there. They can't miss a beat to try and take a pop at fan content. So they were talking about the Agate stuff, trying to inadvertently pin it on the United stand. And thankfully, people in the replies were like, you clearly do not watch the shows, do you? You clearly don't watch fan content, because tell me a time where Agate has been a subject of abuse or ridicule in this community. Never. Or Delit, never. Or Xerxes, never. Because it's just not, I mean, look, some of you might have done it, but I think as a collective, Anthony stood by him. You know, it's certainly for the first year, you've got to stick by these players. And I'm sure it will be water off a duck's back, but it's all I can say is it's dangerous. And what I will say though is, I will say this, absolutely going to say this, there is nothing wrong with football fans disliking a player's ability and discrediting their ability. I don't want to live in a world where that's wrong. You can. I don't want to live in a world where you can't criticise players, because as a kid, when I was going to watch games, and in the early noughties, when I was going to watch games, I have listened all my life to the terraces and the crowds criticise and have a pop at players. And the story I always use is if that you were going to Old Trafford in the early noughties, you will know this is true. The amount of times Ryan Giggs used to get jeered for giving the ball away and everything like that, it used to be quite frustrating. He was a legend and we loved him, but he was frustrating and people did get on his back. This happened. Now, people would find that hard to believe, but that's just what it's like in a football ground. And if you go there regularly, you'll know that. We saw it, we've seen it this season. We've seen it with Delo in the last few weeks, like the jeering and the size, you know, this happens. This is what happens. And that shouldn't not happen. Criticism of players is absolutely fine. It's just, it's the abuse, to be honest, isn't it? It's the strange abuse, especially of players that have only just come to the football club. But on any level, I just think it's a bit strange. Nick J has just gifted 10 memberships. Thank you very much. Last Survivor. Thank you very much, Nick J, actually. That's very generous of you. 10 memberships there. Make sure you give a W to that. Last Survivor says, just curious, what do you think of taking back Sancho and Rashford? Heard the talks in Ireland and now I'm curious. You're a troll on the wind-up. I'm not wasting any time on that. I put the Agate hate in the same category as the early Xerxes hate. If we had Twitter in 2006, same comments would have been made about Evra and Vidic, says Nick J. Very, very good points. Very intelligent. Anders Stanson says, off topic, but I think we'll sign Osman or Jokeres for shirt sales, then go budget on the rest. I'd rather Kuna than Dibbling. He'd be cheaper too, says Anders. I'd love Kuna. I'm glad you reminded me of him, Anders, because for me, Kuna is perfect. I think he's one of the few players out there that I just look at and it excites me in the sense that I like the aggression. I like the passion. He reminds me a little bit of a, you know, he's got that fire, hasn't he? That Cantona, that Rooney, that Ronaldo. I mean, he's not as good as those players, but he's got something about him. And we need character. You know, we need more Agates and Martinez's and Brunos. We need more Delits. We need more, you know, fighters and passion. And I like that about Kuna. I don't think we're going to get him. I can see him going to a better club, but I would like to get him. Nick J says, isn't Mainu going to want what someone else is willing to offer him in the same league? Chelsea will give him 150k and are currently better. Look, I genuinely think, and if I get proved wrong, I'll get proved wrong, but from everything I'm hearing, and I've said it for a long time, I think that I think Mainu will stay at Manchester United. I think it's a non-story. And I think, look, the interesting thing is that if you are Sir Jim Radcliffe and you know that you could be heading into a transfer window where, let's be clear, the expectation of this summer transfer window, quite rightly, is that it's going to be significant. It is Ruben Amorim's first summer transfer window. They did next to nothing in January. First summer transfer window, new system. There needs to be hundreds of millions of pounds of talent brought in. No one's going to argue with that, are they? Whether it's realistic, first summer transfer window, transformative style of play, squad not good enough, finished in the bottom half of the Premier League. This summer should be significant for incoming players. Yeah? If you're Sir Jim Radcliffe and you know the expectation is that, but you know the reality is not that, then you have got to be sitting in a boardroom going, the fans are expecting big signings. We know we haven't got the money for it and we need to fund a stadium. I need you to get creative on how we deal with a massive part of our fan base being pissed off by a very unimaginative summer transfer window where rivals are getting further away. And the way you do that is that you haven't really got a lot of room for maneuverability. So you've got to generate stories that are non-stories, but people think are stories. And that's what I'm talking about Mainu. Like, Mainu's not going anywhere, but create a story that he might be going somewhere. Create a story that he is going somewhere, and then, he signs a new contract. You've just created a big story out of nothing, like a new signing, when Mainu signs a new contract. And I think that, and it's understandable as well. I don't like it, but it's understandable. And I just think Man United are probably looking at, we're expecting, quite rightly, a major summer rebuild. And it's needed. It's not greed, it's needed. They probably know that they can't provide that rebuild. Certainly if we don't get Europe. So they've got to create ways to distract from the failure. And look, the summer transfer window will go very, very quickly. We were talking at the start of the video about how this change by the Premier League to accommodate the World Club Cup is to open the transfer window on June the 1st. And basically, the whole of June, the transfer window is legitimately open. Now, that's good in a way, because that means you've got 3 months. You've got all of June, all of July, and all of September. But we can't spend any money until July the 1st, because our financial year, which is applicable to PSR and FFP, runs from July the 1st to June the 30th. So if the transfer window is open in June, we can't really spend any money because we haven't got any, as was proved by January. So, and we might not want to sell players in this financial year anyway. So it could be a really big waste of time, June transfer window for Man United. And it has traditionally been a big waste of time. We'll get linked. Oh my God, we'll get linked. Yeah, we'll be legitimately linked to a lot of players. I mean, if you think about last season, June was when the Agate and De Ligt story hit. We didn't sign them till August, but they still hit. Sorry, I meant all of August, not September. So yeah, look, I think expectation has to be managed by the club, certainly. Last Survivor, I've read yours, haven't I? Yeah, just this other story I wanted to talk to you about as well. Ben Jacobs has come out with this evening on Angel Gomez. Clubs in the Premier League in particular are chasing Angel Gomez, and my expectation is that 1, he moves to the Premier League, and 2, strong likelihood that either Tottenham or Manchester United win the race for his signature. I'm not convinced about Angel Gomez. Does that make me a bad person? Or does that make me somebody that's just been scarred so many times over the last decade? I'm not convinced that Angel Gomez... Well, I don't even know the end of the sentence because I just don't know. I'm just not convinced by this deal at the moment. I think I'd be very excited if we did it, and I really liked him when he was part of the youth setup, but I don't know that I'm convinced by Angel Gomez. I don't even know, where would he play in our team? Would he play behind the striker, or would he play in a midfield too? And would he have the physicality and speed to play next to Bruno in a 2 or next to Agate in a 2? And if you played him as a 10, is he quick enough? I mean, it's the problem that Mainu's got. So he's a free transfer, I get that, and he's a good player, but I'm not convinced again by what he comes to United to do. Does he come to United to start, or does he come to United to sit on the bench? That's what I mean. A good player, Free transfer. And if he comes to United, welcome. I hope it works out. But as I say, I'm not convinced as to, are we just buying a bench player then? Or are we buying a starter? And it's interesting, actually, because Last Survivor said, what if Sancho comes back? Which he won't. But can you remember last summer? I said this about Sancho, and I was proved right. People were talking about Sancho coming back from Dortmund, and it was under Ten Hag. And I was like, even if Ten Hag and Sancho make up, which they did in the summer, where does he play for Manchester United? I said, where does he play? Because Bruno will always be the number 10, and we've still got Mason Mount. And on the wings, he will always pick Rashford, and he likes Garnacho. And he's also got Ahmad, who's playing well. So even if Jadon Sancho comes back with his apron on and his chef's hat and he starts cooking, where does he actually fit into the team? So I'm sort of, that's the sort of thing that I think you have to look at when you're buying a player, is where is their place in the team? And I think that I don't know where, I'm not convinced by Angel Gomez in relation to where he fits into the team, because if people aren't convinced by Mainu in the team, then where does Angel Gomez fit into the team? And should we just be buying bench players, squad players? Well, we do need them. And maybe on a free, you'd look at that and go, it's a good deal. And look, the flip side of the coin is Christian Eriksen was a free transfer. And it made a load of sense because he was a free transfer. He wasn't necessarily a starter, although Ten Hag did pick him a lot up until the Andy Carroll injury. But look, if we sign Angel Gomez, I'll be very happy. But right here, right now, I'm not actually convinced by it at the moment. Keel says, Angel Gomez is a reflection of what we are as a club, cheap freebies and loans for 2 more years. Well, I probably have changed my opinion, because I've always said when you buy a player, you don't buy bench players. Like, every player you buy should be a first teamer. So if I've got a midfield of Roy Keane and Paul Scholes, do I go and buy a bench player, or do I buy Patrick Vieira? I buy Patrick Vieira because I'm like, let them fight it out amongst themselves. Plus, one of them might get injured. I always want to buy first teamers. I don't want to buy bench players because you're literally buying a bench player. I want to buy first team players, and then you let them battle it out with each other, and one of them ends up a bench player, don't they? So I've never been a big fan of just buying bench players. I want to buy first team players. But I think Keel's probably right. Are we in a position to buy first team players at the moment? No. So we probably do need to pad the squad out a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. There was one other thing I wanted to bring in as well, which some of you will be interested in. Some of you will be like, why have you brought that in? But just to keep the name in their head, we have been linked to him quite a lot. Roger Fernandez at Braga, right-sided player. Ruben Amorim is apparently interested in him. Portuguese reports again today saying that Man United are willing to fight for the signing of Braga's Roger Fernandez. Obviously, he would be, well, why would you buy him if you want Tyler Dibbling? So I think that would be a question in itself. But I certainly think that it will be very interesting to see how things pan out on that right-hand side, because obviously Kenda's not going to happen now. So, yeah. Sorry, I was just reading something about Mainu from someone there saying we should sell him. It's about time we got ruthless. Well, you're opening up a can of worms there, aren't you? I mean, I don't think that. Well, I'm not going to be so naive as to say that there's people in this chat that 100% don't want to sell Mainu. There will be a percentage of people that see it as an opportunity to raise money. But my answer to that is, and always will be, why would I look at a player I don't want to sell that we shouldn't be selling and go, well, he's a way to get money in? If somebody says to me, well, look, we need the money to buy players and Mainu could bring £70 million in, I would say, but there's £70 million that's going out of this club over the next 12 months on interest payments. So why would a Man United fan sit there and go, I don't mind us selling Mainu because it gets £70 million into the club? Maybe you should be more focused on the 70 million that's going to go out on debt interest payments that the Glazers just rip us off for every bloody year. So I just don't buy into the whole we need to sell a Mainu or a Garnacho to raise money when there are literally tens of millions of pounds going out the football club every year on debt interest. I don't get the justification for a United fan to sit there like they're playing Monopoly and go, yeah, but it will get 60, 70 million pounds into the club. Hold on a minute. Why is that relevant when that money's going out on debt interest? I don't get why people start acting like they're bloody accountants. We shouldn't ever justify selling good players to raise money when the club is spewing out money because of the Glazers. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I never understand that argument. If you don't think Mainu's any good and you want to sell him, that's a different thing. But I think a lot of people look at Mainu and go, well, it's a way to get money in so we can buy players, and we should never justify that. I don't understand that argument. Like, why would a Manchester United fan sit there and go, well, I understand why we need to do it. We're broke. We've got to raise money somehow. Why are we broke? Why are we broke? Because the owners of the football club are still here. And they're still here because the other guy, Sir Jim, got into bed with them and helped them stay. I ain't sitting here and going, yeah, I understand why we'd sell Mainu for money. Bullshit. If you want to sell him because you don't think he's good enough, that's the only reason we should sell any player. It should never be for money, because Manchester United, you can't justify an argument for money when you look at the financial situation of the football club and how it spews out tens of millions of pounds every year on bloody debt interest. So I'm not interested in the argument about, well, it'll raise some money. We'll raise a bloody lot of money if the Glazers have been booted out. So the only argument for me with Mainu or Garnacho or anybody else is, are they good enough? And if they're not good enough, then they need to be moved on. But I don't believe that about Mainu. I think it's ridiculous at 19 to be... I mean, it's almost impossible anyway. Nobody's got a crystal ball. I've said to you for a long time, I think Garnacho's got the highest ceiling at Man United. People tell me I'm wrong. We'll see in 3 years' time. The whole point of a ceiling is, by the time he's 24, I think he'll be the best player at Man United. I may be wrong, but I stand by it. Nobody can tell me Mainu ain't going to be good enough. You can guess, but you can't tell me he's not going to be good enough, and I think he will be good enough. And you can't sell him at 19 and definitively tell me he ain't going to be good enough, because I think he will. I think he's had a bad season. I do think he's had a bad season, but when I look back a year ago, and when I look back at the Euros, I see what he really is. And I wouldn't let him go. Clip it. We get top 4 with kids next season, says Keel. No chance. And Mirror FTW says, as a follower of all your live streams, you have totally buried all my excitement for this summer transfer window. No, you're not listening. You're not listening. What I'm saying is that if we don't get European football, we're probably staring into a very, very, very dark hole. If we do get Europa League, and I think we will win it, I think it suddenly opens everything up. But you're going to have to wait till May anyway. I think we're going to win the Europa League. Percentage chance of us winning it is probably around 20%, 1 in 5. But I think we are going to win it. But if we don't win it, I can't see how you build a stadium, pay £90 million on transfers that you've got to pay debt interest, and deal with an 80 million hole in your revenue, and then go and spend 300 million. I can't see it. So I think that we can still have a very exciting summer transfer window, and you never know what's going to happen. Remember, at the start of the summer transfer window last year, there was a lot of client journalists doing articles saying FFP, PSR, challenging, and then we bought De Ligt, Agate, Xerxes, Yoro, and Mazraoui. So we can do stuff, and we will do stuff. But I do think we also have to be realistic that they're putting up a lot of warnings that it won't be the summer we want. And they're not talking about selling a Garnacho or Mainu for the hell of it. Like, they are prepping you for that. It doesn't mean they'll do it, but they're mercenaries. They're mercenaries. And they'll do what they can to try and turn this club around. It's just whether what they're going to do is the right thing or the wrong thing. Leo says, we're like what top 5 richest clubs as far as revenue, but we can't buy top players because we're broke. It's almost like the owners run the club badly. Wolf in Blue says, if we do get Europe next year, is a goalkeeper on the top of the list for the summer? Mate, look, everybody's talking about it now. We broke it over a week ago. Amorim wants to replace Onana. It's true. But Mourinho wanted to replace Martial. And 2 years later, Mourinho was sacked and Martial stayed for another 5 years. So that's always worth keeping in your head. Amorim wants to do a few things. Whether he gets to do it or not, well, history shows you that you don't. And that's always been an annoyance of mine, and I'm sure it is of yours as well, is that managers like Van Gaal and Jose and Ten Hag and Rangnick and Amorim and Ollie get judged on things that are not fair. They're not fair. Like the anecdotes of managers that have tried to do things and not been allowed to do them, but then they pay with their job. And we never really understand that. When Jose's here, no one talks about it. When Ollie's here, no one talks about it. When they've left, then they do the interview and you go, oh yeah, they wanted to do that and they weren't allowed. Well, look, here's Amorim. He wants rid of Onana. Do the club do it? If they don't do it, it's not because Amorim's changed his mind, it's because they won't do it. I mean, look, what was it Andy Mitten said in January? And he's close to Ollie, is that Andy Mitten said pre-Amorim, there are a couple of managers that have had issues with Marcus Rashford. So how long has Rashford been an issue at the club for other managers other than an Amorim? And is it only because Sir Jim looks at Rashford's wage and goes, actually, financially, we do need to get rid of Rashford? So look, I can't tell you that we're going to get a new goalkeeper. What I can tell you is that we want one. But Amorim wants Gyökeres. He probably ends up with plan F instead of plan A. So I think ultimately the situation at the football club is not great. But as has been proved with the likes of Ancelotti at Real Madrid and Pep Guardiola at Man City, if you give a manager enough plan A picks, they will be successful. And if you give a manager a lot of plan D, E and F picks, they probably won't be successful. It ain't rocket science. Football is actually very simple, and it's the same as many other things in life. If you marry the girl or boy or woman or man or whatever you want to call it, or whatever people call it now, if you marry the person that you get on with, that you find attractive and you love, you're probably going to have a happy relationship. If you marry somebody that, you don't mind the look of, but you can't stand them as a person, you're probably not going to have a very long and fruitful marriage, are you? If you are running if you're a chef and you get really good quality ingredients, you're probably going to get a lot of good reviews. If you get inferior ingredients, you're probably going to get a few complaints. And if you're a manager and you get a lot of the players that you want, you're probably going to be successful. And if you get a lot of the players that you don't really want, you're probably going to struggle. It's really, really simple. And over the last 10 years, Manchester United have served up too many players that weren't pick A or B for the managers that they had. And you're asking them to do a job with one and sometimes two arms tied behind their back. And that's been the problem at Manchester United. I'll tell you now, we can all dictate and project our opinions on how you do this and how you do that. But I don't need to be the director of football. I don't need to be the manager. I don't need to be in the recruitment meetings. If I was Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I would say, look, give Ruben Amorim pick A or B 90% of the time and we will be successful. I don't need to know the players. Just give him plan A or B 90% of the time and we'll be successful. And I think over the years, we've probably given our managers pick A or B less than 40% of the time. On Dibbling, a 100 million player is one who fits the system like a glove, guarantees a trophy and solves a glaring issue on the team. Tyler is none of those despite being a good and promising youngster, says Andre. Is there a £100 million player out there that you think would help Man United? Because actually, I can think of people like Jude Bellingham, and I can think of people like Saka, and I can think of people like Isak, all in the Premier League, of course. But is this not a good point? If I had £100 million and I could buy Bellingham or Saka or Isak, I would say no. I would rather buy 3 players for that because I need quantity and quality. You know, I would rather spend £100 million on, let's say, Edison and Gyökeres than spend it on Isak. Or spend it on 3 £35 million players. I don't really think £100 million player really is what... We're not 1 or 2 £100 million players away from winning the league. We are 8 £50 million players away from winning the league. So I need quality and quantity. And that's not disputing that a Saka or someone wouldn't be a big player for Man United, but we're not 1 player away. If I buy you Saka for £100 million, Arsenal are going to want more, by the way, but let's just say I get Saka for £100 million. We're still probably going to finish outside the top 8 next year because you're not going to have a goalkeeper that's good enough. You're not going to have a striker. You're still not going to have, another midfielder. Like, we're not 1 or 2 players away. We're 8 or 9 players away. And we're not going to spend £1 billion on 9 £100 million players. We need squad depth. Exactly. Thank you very much for that, Andre. And there's no point selling a player we know will be good for a player that could end up being a risk and could turn out to be no good, says Payne. And Wolf in Blue says, if we do get Europe next year, is a goalkeeper on the top of the list for the summer? Done that one, haven't we? By the way, why isn't Mainu playing, says Sartak? He's injured. He's injured at the moment. So, yeah. Some good... Lewis Jackson says, well said, Mark. I think there's been lots of good little clip segments in the show tonight. I think we've gone through some good stuff. This is why I like the 8 o'clock shows in the international break, because I think we delve into conversations and riff off really, really well. I've really enjoyed it. Also, just on Mainu, I think next season he'll have a good season. I think him and Garnacho will continue to get better and better, and I do think he'll have I think Mainu next season, having not played a lot of football this year, I think he'll be really good. I really do. Okay, if I was Mainu or Garnacho listening to the club saying they're going to sell me, I'd literally leave. No motivation, says Frank. I mean, look, Garnacho wasn't that far away. From going in the summer. Was he? I'm just putting my live in real life stream I did in the live chat for you if people want to go and watch that. Red wine is boss, says Toon. I'm desperate for a drink. I haven't had one yet, so I'm going to go and probably go and have a couple of lagers myself now. Maybe a red. We'll see how it goes. Fantastic show tonight. Really enjoyed it. What day is it? Oh, I'll tell you what, we're getting back to fucking football being back, aren't we? I'll even watch the FA Cup this weekend. Come on, Bournemouth. Who else is playing? Brighton Forest. That'll be a good game. Bournemouth Man City. Preston Villa. And what's the other one? 3 games. Who else is in the cup? Brighton Forest, Preston Villa, Bournemouth City, and Fulham against somebody. Brian says, great show tonight. Well, you've all made it a great show. And obviously, Man United aren't that far away from playing either. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm on the 10 o'clock show tomorrow, by the way. 10 o'clock show tomorrow. When's Amorim's press conference? He won't do it tomorrow. It'll be Monday, surely. Surely do it Monday. Fulham Palace. Yeah. I just want Bournemouth to knock Man City out. That would be great. That would be great. Thanks everyone for watching. Please do check out my Goldbridge IRL video I did this afternoon. I was actually trying out a new bit of kit that I'm actually going to use on the United stand. So it'd be interesting to see that camera is not moving because I've got a camera person. It's moving itself. Thanks everyone for watching. Great show tonight. Take care, and I'll speak to you all in a bit. Thank you very much.